Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting video. Today we will tell you the story of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse from beginning to end. You can watch the second season through the link in the description. The film begins with Peter Parker's voice introducing himself as Spider-Man, the one and only person capable of saving people and cities. The scene shifts to a teenage boy, Miles, getting ready for school. He lives with his father, Jefferson, and his mother, Rio, in Brooklyn. He goes to school with his father, and after reaching there, his father says to him, "I love you," and insists he say the same in reply, but Miles feels embarrassed. Miles tries to adjust to the new environment. He escapes his room and goes to see his uncle, Aaron, who teaches him how to charm a girl. He then leads Miles to an abandoned tunnel where he paints graffiti and is bitten by a radioactive spider. The next day, Miles notices changes in his body, such as hearing voices in his head and excessive sweating. He believes he is approaching puberty. He comes across a girl named Gwen and tries to touch her shoulder, as instructed by his uncle, but his hand gets caught in the girl's hair. They both have to go to the nurse to cut Gwen's hair off. He runs from school in embarrassment and everything starts to stick to his body. He is surprised to discover that he can easily walk on walls, and he recognizes his newfound abilities. Gwen is also shocked to see Miles crawling on the walls. Miles gets worried and decides to tell his uncle about this, but he is not in town. He then thinks of telling his parents, but his dad does not answer his call. He then goes to the tunnel again and sees the dead spider lying there, but it starts glitching. Suddenly, Spider-Man comes there, chased by the Green Goblin. Miles attempts to flee, but the Green Goblin attacks him and he starts falling down. Spider-Man rescues him and realizes that Miles is just like him, and he assures Miles that he will help him. He then asks him to remain silent while he turns off the collider. Spider-Man is attacked by the Green Goblin and the Prowler, and Kingpin tries to start the collider, but a massive explosion occurs in the station. Miles finds the injured Spider-Man, who gives him a flash drive and asks him to turn off the collider. He advises him not to reveal his identity while turning off the collider. Kingpin then appears and removes Spider-Man's mask, revealing his face to Miles, who is hiding Kingpin. Kingpin murders Spider-Man and discovers Miles. He orders Prowler to kill Miles as well, but Miles escapes, returns home, and weeps while hugging his father. He then learns that Spider-Man, who was Peter Parker, has died. Miles wears the costume of Spider-Man and attends Peter's funeral. Inspired by Peter's wife's words about Peter, Miles decides to become a Spider-Man like him, but fails to know how to gain powers like Peter. He visits Peter's grave and meets Peter from another dimension. When the cops arrive, Peter tells Miles about his life, and Miles is forced to flee with Peter. They arrive at a safe location, and Miles asks him why he looks like Peter Parker, to which he responds that he is Peter Parker. When Miles questions him about how he can be alive after death, Peter explains the alternate dimension theory. Peter wants to get the flash drive to go back to his home, but Miles urges him to destroy the collider. Peter agrees and teaches Miles how to fly like him using his powers. Miles finds Kingpin going to his research facility, and later he and Peter sneak into the facility and steal the data about the collider. While copying the data, they are detected by Kingpin's scientist, Olivia Octavius, who informs Peter that he will die soon if he remains in this dimension. Miles realizes that he can be invisible whenever he is scared. Octavius then attacks Peter and Miles and chases them, but Gwen from the other dimension comes and saves them. She introduces herself as a Spider-Woman, claiming to have been bitten by a radioactive spider. She will tell them that she saved her father, but her friend Peter could not survive, and she was sent to this dimension. Kingpin recalls how once his wife and son saw him killing the Spider-Man, and they ran from there in fear and died in a car accident. Octavius reports to Kingpin that there are 3 Spider-Men. It is revealed that Kingpin's motive to start the collider is to get his wife and son back. Peter, Miles, and Gwen pay a visit to Peter's Aunt May, who takes them to a secret hideout filled with various suits, gadgets, and vehicles. They encounter Spider-Woman Noir, Penny Parker, and Spider-Ham, all of who have been drawn from their own dimensions into Miles' universe. They plan to stay behind and shut down the collider with a new goober so that the rest of them can return home, but Miles insists that it must be him because this is his dimension. Miles' abilities are mentioned by Peter to reassure others that he is capable of doing so, but Miles is unable to demonstrate them. He becomes invisible and leaves from there. He goes to his uncle Aaron's house, but he is not there. At the same time, Miles' parents contact Aaron to inquire about Miles. Miles is writing a message for his uncle when Prowler appears, and Miles becomes invisible once more. After a while, Prowler is revealed to be Aaron, much to Miles' surprise. Miles attempts to flee, and Prowler pursues him, but he manages to avoid him. Miles arrives at Aunt May's house and informs the other spiders that his uncle works for Kingpin. Meanwhile, Prowler arrives with Octavius, Goblin, Tombstone and Scorpion and attacks them. Miles is chased out of the house by Prowl, who is taken aback when Miles removes his mask. He then releases Miles, but Kingpin shoots him. Aaron encourages Miles to continue on his mission. Miles' father arrives, and Miles becomes invisible before his father can see him. Miles walks into his room where the other spider people cheer him on, while his roommate collapses when he sees them crawling on the walls. Miles refuses to give Peter a goober, stating that he will turn off Collider. Peter binds him with a chair and departs with the goober. After some time, Miles' father arrives, but Miles is unable to respond because his mouth is sealed with a web. After freeing himself, Miles goes to Aunt May's house, gets the original Spider-Man suit, and wears it after painting it black. He then tests his abilities by swinging around the city. Spiders can easily sneak into Kingpin's gala because the entire staff is dressed in spider masks. Peter sees Mary Jane and tries to talk to her, but she does not recognize him. Spider people try to turn off the Collider, but Octavius attacks them. Miles joins his team and defeats Octavius, but the Collider activates, causing an earthquake throughout the city. Spider-Man Noir battles Tombstone, Penny, and SP. Dr. Battle Goblin and Spider-Ham smashes Scorpion with a toy mallet. Octavius pursues Gwen and Peter as Miles attempts to shut down the Collider. The henchmen are dispatched and Octavius is run down by an interdimensional vehicle. Unfortunately, SP Doctor has been severely injured, leaving Penny distraught while Noir and Spider-Ham console her. She returned to the Spider as they prepared to return home. They say their goodbyes, with Penny leaving first, followed by Noir and Spider-Ham. Before leaving, Gwen confirms her bond with Miles. Peter attempts to stay behind and assist Miles, but Miles chooses to send Peter back so that he can mend what needs to be fixed in his world. Miles then pursues the Collider, but Kingpin responds violently. Miles and Kingpin fight when Miles' father reaches there, and to see the situation, he calls for backup. Kingpin knocks down Miles, but his father encourages him to get up. Miles gets back up, plus Kingpin, and throws him at the button that turns off the Collider. Miles calls his father to tell him that he is okay, and then he hugs his father while wearing the mask. Jefferson does not realize that he is Miles, and then sees Kingpin hanging in the webs, ready to be arrested. Miles returns to school and becomes well known throughout the city. Peter tries to mend his relationship with Mary Jane. A dimensional portal opens while Miles is resting in his room. He then hears Gwen's voice calling him. In the end, Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, learns about the other spider people through his assistant Lila. He visits Earth 67 and engages in an odd pointing contest with Spider-Man from the 1960s cartoon.